Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brittany, and in today's video we are going to be sewing. We're going to be sewing along to the Mimi, which is a PDF pattern by Mimi G Styles. As of today, which is July 13th, 2020, the pattern is listed on her website for $3. You all know I said I wanted to begin doing more sew-alongs for indie patterns, and so it's important for me to make sure that I find some that are at various price ranges. Now, just a disclaimer, I purchased this pattern on my own. I've actually had it for a while. This pattern was published with the So So Def mag, which was Mimi G's digital magazine a couple years ago. I used to be an editor on that magazine, but I got the pattern back then. I'm just now getting around to sewing it, and I figured this is a great time to do a video for it. This is a really easy pullover casual dress. Depending on the fabric that you use, you can dress it up, put it with some heels, dress it down, put it with some sneakers, which is what I did. This is the dress. I was about to say, this is the fabric. This is the whole dress, girl. This is the fabric that I use. This fabric is from the Sewing Studio. It's really nice and lightweight. I really love the texture that is on this fabric, and I know that they have it in different colorways. If you're interested in it, I will link it for it below, but I would recommend this fabric for more of a garment that's more looser, that requires a lightweight knit. I wouldn't recommend it for this dress, only because this dress is kind of body hugging, form fitting. You would want a knit that has a little bit of recovery, a little bit of structure, body to it, as opposed to this one for this dress, which is more lightweight and more loose, has a lot of stretch in it, but not that great on recovery, but it will be fantastic for a nice loose fitting knit garment. And again, I really do love the texture on this fabric, and I know they have different colorways, so I will link it below just in case you have a garment that requires a lightweight knit. This would be great for it. So if you are interested in sewing this dress along with me, I have a link in the description box where you can go ahead and purchase your pattern. Go ahead and print it out. It's a total of 3 pattern pieces, so you have the front, the back, and the neckband. And let's go ahead and get started sewing. So with PDF patterns, the first thing that I do is I go ahead and print out the first page, and I measure this little square that they have to make sure that I've scaled my pattern and that it's printed out the correct way. When it comes to taping them, you just want to make sure that you're matching up the symbols, the notches, the letters that they have on their patterns. So for this piece, I already taped the first row. So after I have taped the first row, I always like to trim off the bottom. For me, with PDF patterns, I cannot trim off both of the same edges, and I'm going to show you what I mean in a moment. So I like to just trim off one side, but then keep paper on the other side. So right now, I'm just trimming off the bottom of this first row. Once I have trimmed off the bottom edge of that first row, then I go ahead and get the next page to start the next row. And what I do is I go ahead and match up the symbols. So I'm matching up the circles here. And you can see that I have trimmed off that one side, so I can just slide the next page up. It gets really hard for me to see if I trimmed off more than I needed to. So I always like to just leave paper on the edge of one of their paper, if that even makes sense. I hope me talking and then you can see it, that it makes sense. So again, I just trim off one side, slide it under there, and match up the notches. So that is how I do my PDF patterns. I take my time to make sure that I'm matching up my symbols. I grab my tape and I just tape it in place. Once you have it taped in place, then you can just continue taping your pages until you have your pattern finished, and then you can go ahead and cut it out. Right here, I'm sharing with you the adjustment that I made. So this right here is the waistline of the Mimi dress. I cut the large around the bust and the waist, and then I merged over to the extra, extra large for the hip line. That actually turned out to be too much, and I'm going to show you later in the video that I actually pinned out some of that fabric. So I could have just graded over to the extra large for this pattern. It would have fit. I made that same adjustment to the other pattern piece. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and scroll up to step 1, which is right here. The first step is to stitch the center back seam together, and the seam allowance is 1/4 inch. So it's really important when you're sewing with PDF patterns to look and see what is the recommended seam allowance that they are using. And for this, the seam allowance is 1/4 inch. So I'm going to find my back pattern piece. Okay, here's the back. I'm going to grab some pins and I'm going to pin this back center seam together, making sure my fabric is right sides facing. So I'm just going to pin it in place. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and stitch this together at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Because I am sewing a knit garment, I'm gonna go ahead and pop in a jersey needle. So I'm gonna take this one off. All right, now that I have my center back seam sewn, so I've sewn my seam and I just finished off the edges together. Don't mind the black serger thread. I do not have this rustic color in serger thread, so yeah, we're just gonna use what I have. But this is the center back seam. I have it sewn together. And also I wanted to mention, because I know some people like to just serge knits, just sew their whole project with a serger. You have that option. You can do what works best for you. Me personally, I just love to sew and then serge. But again, if you want to serge this dress, I mean, you do again what works best for you. So let me go ahead and grab the front pattern piece. All right, so here is the front pattern piece right here. And I'm just gonna go ahead and open this out. So this is gonna be the right side right here. So what we wanna do is take this to the sewing machine and we want to do some reinforcing right here along this opening. And so the instruction says approximately 1 inch over from this lower edge here and across the bottom, as well as this lower edge 1 inch over. We want to do some reinforcing. So we're just gonna create like a little box right here along this edge, and then we will clip to those corners. So again, about 1 inch over, just down here at the bottom, no need to go all the way up to the top. We're just gonna do some reinforcing right here along the bottom edge of this opening. For the reinforcing, I'm gonna go back to a straight stitch. All right, so I've just done my reinforcing, and I know you probably cannot see this, but on step 2 of the instructions right here, this is just exactly what I did. So I just created a little reinforcing, that dotted line. That is exactly what I did right here on mine. So now I'm gonna go ahead and grab my snippers, and I'm just gonna snip right to those corners. Okay, so I just clipped. This is my reinforcement right here. So now we can move on to the next step. The next step is to go ahead and put right sides together. So our shoulder seams and side seams, we're gonna start sewing those now. So here is my back right here. Gonna lay it down right sides facing. And I'm going to pin the shoulder seams and the side seams. Now that we have pinned together our shoulder seams as well as the side seams, we can go ahead and stitch them together. And the seam allowance is again 1/4 inch. So let's go ahead to the machine and stitch these together now. Starting from the hem, I'm going to begin stitching at 1/4 inch, and I am back on a zigzag stitch. After I sewed the side seams together, I went ahead and tried on the dress, and you can see that I've pinned out some extra fabric that I had around my hip area. So I'm just gonna go back to the sewing machine. I'm just gonna stitch that fabric out, eliminating that excess, and then I'm gonna continue sewing the dress. All right, so I've just sewn my shoulder seams together as well as the side seams. I finished them off with my serger and I gave everything a really good press. Okay, and so the next steps, we are now on step 4, which is the neckband. So here's my neckband piece here. I'm gonna go ahead and put the dress to the side. And so with wrong sides facing, we're gonna fold the neckband in half. So the right side of your fabric should be out facing you. And I'm gonna go ahead and give this a press. Okay, now that we have it pressed, it says using pins or fabric marker, divide the neckband into quarters. Okay, so first I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm gonna place a pin right here at this half mark. Then it says to lay right side edge over left side, pin in place. So I'm gonna lay mine the way that the diagram has it. And it says to lay the right side over the left. So like this. I'm gonna place a pin down here. And it says to pin and baste. So we're gonna baste this at 1/4 inch. All right, now that we have basted the lower edge of the neckband right here together, now we're gonna go ahead and grab our dress and put it so that the right sides are facing out. All right, now we're gonna take the neckband. This is the side right here where I put the right over the left. I'm gonna pin it right here at this opening where we did that reinforcing at the beginning. And we're gonna pin that in place. Once you have it pinned, we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna stitch it from the corners where we snipped at. So we snipped into our fabric right here. So we're gonna stitch it from the snipped corner to the other snipped corner. So we're just gonna go right across at 1/4 inch right here, making sure that we catch in this little triangle of fabric that we have left right here. So from the snip corner to the snip corner, we're gonna go ahead and stitch across right here. All right, now that we have stitched this on right here at the opening, now we want to divide the neckline into 4ths. So I'm gonna use the back. This one is a guide for the back. And for here, we need to divide this in half too because the shoulders are not a 4th. Now that you have your pins, now we're going to flip the neckband up. I'm gonna be honest, y'all, I'm not 100% sure if I flipped this the right way or if I tacked it down. So we're just gonna go with it and find out together. We'll see how this works. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab some pins and start to pin this in place. I'm just gonna flip this over, fingers crossed that this works out for me. We're gonna see in a minute. So I'm just gonna pin this on, right sides together. And we have our pins here that match up with our 4ths. So I'm gonna pin that there. And now I'm just gonna continue pinning, and you will need to stretch the neckband to fit. All right, so I have the neckband pinned on, and see that when it is closed, it's gonna lap over like this, I do believe. So I may be onto something, or I may have it flipped backwards. If that's the case, then all is well. I really don't care about it being flipped backwards. I just want it to be nice and clean and look decent on the outside. All right, so here is my neckband after I have sewn it on. I finished off the raw edge and I also pressed it. The next step is to go ahead and do some top stitching. So we're gonna top stitch 1/8 of a way from the seam right here all the way around, making sure that you catch in the seam allowance. So let's go ahead and do a top stitch right here along the edge. All right, I've just done the top stitching along this opening edge right here. I'm gonna give it one final press. The next step says to do our hem. So it says turn 1 inch, turn under 1 inch and pin and top stitch. So we're just gonna fold under 1 inch, press it, and then stitch it in place. For the raw edge, I may do 1/4 inch, fold under the 1/4 inch, and then fold under 1 inch or 5/8, and then go ahead and stitch it in place. And then do the same thing for the hem of the dress. I'm gonna fold under maybe like 1/4 inch and then fold under 5/8 and then stitch that in place. And then once you have the hems, you just need to apply your snaps and then you are all done with this dress. I applied my snaps using my little snap pliers. I think it's the snap and eyelet pliers. I found these at my local craft store and they came with some little snaps in the kit. And all I'm doing is just following the directions on the back of the kit. When you buy kits or when you buy grommets or covered buttons or eyelets, they usually have a little how-to guide on the back of the packet. And so that's all I'm doing. I'm just taking the pieces, putting it into the tool. Again, I found it at my local craft store. I am putting a pin through the top of the snap so I can mark for the bottom part to make sure that everything matches up. And so after I have it marked, I'm going to go ahead and grab the tool. I'm going to put it right, I'm going to center that mark right over it. I'm using my fingers to kind of feel for the sharp part of the snap. And then I'm just going to press that in place. And there I have my snaps. And so I'm just going to continue this until I have all 4 complete, and then I'll be done with my dress. Well, that is all for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comment section. Be sure to like, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, and I will see you all in the next video. Blessings, everyone. Bye.